can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the DOJ under Attorney General Todd Blanche, and we are going to be making arrests. It's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon. That is a quote from Kash Patel, director of the FBI, on Sunday morning in an interview on Fox News. Tull, he is not talking about a drug cartel or a terrorist cell, but members of the Obama administration. It's a bizarrely undercovered interview in my mind, Tull. It should be one of the biggest stories of the week here in the U.S. It's not even the biggest story involving Patel himself. Welcome to the Atlantic Current. I'm Vince Martin here, as always, with Tull McAdoo from the Irish Politics newsletter. We're going to start with these Patel stories, one of which, Tull, I knew you would love the second you read it.
Yes, Vincent. Hello, listeners. We've got a story that combines all of my favourite things. Law enforcement, the FBI, a $250 million defamation claim, a lawsuit, and a man who probably should be using his security detail as his AA sponsor, Vincent. The Atlantic, the venerable Atlantic magazine, which is what people read when they want to feel smart about hating Republicans, isn't it, Vincent?
Yeah, that's a good
Is it
way
Jeff
to put it.
Bezos' wife funds them, is it? I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Steve Jobs' wife.
Steve Jobs' wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which feeds into quite a few of the conspiracy theories about the article. So,
Yes, the headline went something like this. Kash Patel is too sauce to save democracy. That's the headline.
We're going to get a defamation lawsuit. I don't think that's exactly what the title was.
Well, the FBI can try and track me down in West Cork.
That's true.
They'll never find me.
Yeah, because Patel is drunk.
Yes. Patel is going to be too drunk to find a Tull McAdoo. But the gist is, the FBI director, Kash Patel, is allegedly spending more time 3 sheets to the wind than overseeing national security. Is that a fair sum up?
I think that's in the ballpark, yeah.
Right, so we have 24 anonymous sources, which is a lot of anonymous sources.
Yeah.
And in my experience, when anonymous sources are texting you or sending you messages, it's usually from the bathroom or they're 3 sheets to the wind themselves. He's been so drunk, allegedly. We like the word of allegedly. The lawyers do anyway. He's not fun Tull drunk at a wedding or, your drunk uncle at a wedding. It's more like we need to reschedule the counterintelligence briefing because the boss is off his face in a club across the road called Ned's.
Yeah.
What's this Ned's place, Vincent?
Ned's is evidently a private club in D.C. His other favorite haunt, which was reported before this Atlantic report dropped, is a private club in Las Vegas. It's at the top of a hotel on the Strip, and it's called the Poodle Room.
Oh, God.
And yeah, it has a $20,000 members fee. So this had already raised some eyebrows before this article. Now that the name Poodle Room, people are obviously having a little bit of fun with.
That's going to become a euphemism for something else.
Something, yeah.
So the highlights of this article are a Vegas trip where his own security detail reportedly couldn't wake him, and they considered using breaching equipment, which I assume is some sort of sledgehammer or those battery clams that you see on TV.
I guess, yeah.
Because they couldn't get past the locked door, which is either a national security crisis or the plot of one of those hangover movies. Hangover for Kash Patel in Vegas.
It's one of the ones that, as we put it here, it probably doesn't even exist anymore, but we used to call those straight to video. Just movies that were so bad they didn't even bother with the theater.
Now, on a more serious note, though, there has been claims that there's been time-sensitive decisions delayed because, the director was, and I quote from The Atlantic, unavailable. And the unavailability was due to him being, allegedly, not all with it. My translation of this is that Kash Patel has been so inebriated that he's been, passed out in the puddle of his own poor life choices, Vincent. Is that a fair... Am I summing things up correctly here, or is that my anti-Trump regime bias shining through here?
I actually am a little skeptical about kind of some of this more sensational charges. We see this a lot in the business press when there's a CEO who is disliked or the company is struggling, and then all of a sudden there's a report from all these employees and it's, 8 sources said this. And the one thing that always concerns me, like the battering ram story, is they're like, we have 8 sources who said that, which is no doubt true. The Atlantic is a good magazine with a good reputation. The journalist is not making things up. But the issue there is you have 8 sources telling the story. In an organization, those 8 sources may have all gotten the story from one person. So you do kind of wind up with the idea that it's possible to have a little bit of an echo chamber, particularly for someone like Patel, who by a lot of FBI agents and a lot of former members of the Bureau is pretty despised, not unreasonably.
Now, Vincent, we've all been there, haven't we? Gone into work a little bit hungover, had too much the night before.
Yeah. One of us may have recorded a podcast or two hungover, but I'm not naming any name.
No, we actually haven't all been there, Vincent, all right? Okay, we all haven't been there because you and I don't have jobs where being there means classified information gets delayed and federal agents are on the spot of bother and have to consider breaking down the door because the boss has had, one too many.
That's fair. That's not really a universal story. That's true.
Yeah, and that's not we've all been there. That's someone needs an intervention and probably a new career of some sort. I don't know where he's going to get. He can go back to writing books or something. I don't know.
You can quibble perhaps about the details in the article. And like I said, I'm not completely convinced by the most sensational stuff. But it's also worth noting, this did not come out of nowhere. There have been a lot of reports that he's flying around the country on the FBI plane, visiting his girlfriend. At the Olympics, he was in the locker room of the U.S. men's hockey team after they won, chugging a beer.
Quite frankly, I would do that. I do that as well, Vincent.
Of course, right.
What red-blooded male wouldn't do that?
No, not a one.
So let me go on the record as saying, if I was President of Ireland, or Taoiseach, or Prime Minister of Ireland, and Cork won the All-Ireland final, I would be down to my boxer shorts in the locker room with the lads, chugging as many beers as possible. So I'm not judging Kash Patel for that, okay?
Yeah, okay, that's fair. We're trying to be a balanced podcast. We're not just going to just jump on the guy. But yeah, that part I agree with. Just in general, though, if you're the director of the FBI, you just shouldn't be at a place called the Poodle Room. Can we just we have some basic level of decorum? I don't care if you're drinking or not. Just don't go to the Poodle Room.
Yes.
Go find some nice oak paneled bar in D.C. There's plenty of them. I don't have any problem with that incident in and of itself, but it does get to the idea that there is a pattern here of a lot of people voicing concern that he's partying too much, that he's traveling too much, that he is enamored with the perks of the job rather than the details of the job. And I think we talked about this a little before. He's jumped the gun on a couple investigations, tweeting out that the suspect was captured when he wasn't. And last year, in fact, there was an FBI agent who was interviewed on TV who said that Patel had been spotted more often in nightclubs than at FBI headquarters. And that got a little bit of press. Patel actually sued him for defamation. As you noted, he's suing the Atlantic for $250 million. He sued that former FBI agent. And interestingly enough, this week, that case was dismissed. The judge said that the statement was, quote, rhetorical hyperbole. So it's not subject to defamation laws, which is good precedent because that means that we can point out that Patel is dumb as a rock.
The judge said it was rhetorical hyperbole, so I'm somebody that knows a bit about that. But this is what happens when you point a conspiracy theorist as your, head guy in the FBI.
Yeah.
I mean, he's clearly a man that's not qualified for the job. Intellectually, emotionally.
Yeah, we talked about that in episode 13 with his children's books, right? The trilogy of...
Yeah.
The trilogy of children's books, which I think you called like conspiracy theories as a bedtime story or something like that. It's all about the 2020 election being rigged and Donald Trump is drop kicking people. And so he's in this position because he was a Trump loyalist. And it doesn't necessarily mean he can't do the job. But I think this article gets to a concern which has been there from the jump, which is that he acts like he's a social media influencer also. He acts like he enjoys the attention, enjoys the fame. You can still run the FBI well and do that. But it does go against the kind of the ethos and the image and the reputation that the FBI wants to put out of kind of basic competent lawmen doing the job. He wants to be flashier. He wants attention. And I mean, I guess you could say there's a little bit of karma here. He's got all the attention he wants this week anyways.
It's probably far more serious. This became a bit of a joke on social media when the story came out.
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody was laughing and joking. The state of Trump's administration, like they're drunks, they're all manner of the worst people in society. But this has real world consequences in terms of when you dig down into the article, right? When you read between the lines, it's an administration in crisis. The FBI as an institution is in crisis because its lack of, for want of a better word, serious leadership at the top of the organisation. And I've noticed throughout the years, working in various organisations, that if the guy at the top is not a particularly serious person and his standards are below what's expected of that organization, then that feeds down. That comes from the top all the way down. And you'll see that in multinationals, you'll see that in political organizations, you'll see it in all sectors of society. If the guy at the top is not a serious person, then the whole organization is going to go to hell. It'll start filtering down into the very lower rungs of the organization, and they're going to look at the guy at the top and they're going to say, well, if he's not taking his job seriously, why should I?
It is an FBI in crisis, and it's a little bit of an administration in crisis. Patel's story overshadowed another piece of news, which is that the Secretary of Labor resigned.
Yes.
This one, too, is kind of a nice sordid tale. She resigned amid a misconduct investigation into her leadership. And there were pretty credible reports that her husband had been banned from the Labor Department building for inappropriately touching women.
Oh, God.
Yeah. There are absolutely confirmed reports because people have seen the expenses that the secretary, whose name is Lori Chavez, the Reamer, took staff to a strip club in Portland, Oregon after a conference. One of the articles covering it, we'll put the picture on our Substack. It is the saddest, seediest, most awful-looking strip club you have ever seen. It's just on this dead corner with cracked sidewalks and stuff. It's just, you're just looking at it like, oh my God, man. Like, if you're going to use taxpayer money for this thing, at least class it up a little bit, for Christ's sakes. At least Patel's at a penthouse in Las Vegas. Let's not be at the 8th best strip club in Portland, Oregon. So, yeah, she's out, and there is a little bit of a sense that we're starting to see the turnover now that we saw in his first term, right?
Yeah, there's an element of fear and loathing leaving the Republican Party, which is a reference to Fear and Loathing leaving Las Vegas by the brilliant Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah,
everything's going to hell. Nobody's in charge. Nobody knows what's going on. The Secretary of the U.S. Navy, John Phelan, was dismissed also because of his differences in regards to with Hegseth and what's going on with the war in Iran.
Yeah. That one is something that might get a little overblown, though, because his appointment was kind of strange to begin with. He has no military experience. He kind of got that job because he was one of Trump's biggest donors. So in a different context, I think a lot of people would be looking at his dismissal differently. It looks terrible that it happened in the midst of a war, particularly a war that includes a blockade, which obviously the U.S. Navy is going to be involved in, but it's not entirely surprising that it happened. But as we were saying with kind of Patel and some of these little stories, it's one more data point. People are starting to either leave or be pushed off the ship. And when that happens, everybody starts to go, oh, that means the ship must be sinking, right?
Yes, you see this in all organizations, Vincent, and all political parties as the end is nearing and their grip on power is starting to slip. They start to turn on each other like starving cannibals. A good example of that would be during Ireland's bailout. We very famously had Noel Dempsey and Dermot Ahern, two Fianna Fáil TDs, went on national television to deny that any bailout was happening, that the IMF, the World Bank were not in town to bail us out, when actually the IMF and the World Bank had landed about 10 minutes earlier in Dublin, and they all started to turn on each other after that. The government wasn't informing its own party members that we were getting bailed out, while they were on national television telling people, oh no, there's nothing to worry about.
You're right.
So when political organisations start to fray at the seams like that, it's usually a sign that their grip on power is starting to slip. They're starting to lose, and that's what's happening here with Trump and the rest of them. They're trying their best to keep a grip on power, to keep a hold on power, to project images of strength and that they're people in control, and they're not. And it's starting to fray at the seams. That happens in all political organisations once things start to fall apart.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting segue into the interview that I want to talk about, Patel on Fox News, because the story of the labor secretary, the story of Patel drinking too much, these are, as you point out, pretty common stories, not just in America, right? Scandal-plagued politician. There have been Irish ministers, I'm sure, who drank to excess in off hours to the point it affected their duty. there have been plenty of American government officials done the same thing. Cabinet secretaries going to strip clubs, I'm sure happened before. It's not usually a woman, but, that's some kind of progress, I guess. So those stories get coverage by the media because they have a familiar outline. This interview with Patel has gotten no coverage. So, for instance, when the Atlantic story dropped, the New York Times sent out a breaking news email about these explosive allegations against Patel. This interview, the New York Times, as far as I can tell, has not been covered at all. But it's an interview. It's on Fox News on Sunday morning with a host named Maria Bartiromo. Bartiromo is a pretty ardent Trump supporter, very close to him, interviews him on the network all the time. She actually came there from CNBC, which is an American cable network. It's basically Sky Sport for the stock market.
Okay.
And she started there as a reporter, and her nickname, believe it or not, was the Money Honey. Because she was this very, very attractive woman in her 30s, and she would report from the floor of the stock exchange, and all the guys like in their offices would supposedly ogle her and all this stuff. So, but she moved to Fox News a decade ago, and this show is a big show, highest rated Sunday morning cable news show left. It's probably 2.5-3 million viewers.
That's a lot.
This matters. Let me put it that way. But again, it's getting no coverage. Now, I haven't been able to find a clip of the full interview. That's probably a good thing. If there was a clip, we wouldn't link to it because we like our listeners and no one really needs to sit through this 10 minutes. But a core point that this interview highlights is we talked in our January 6th episode in particular about how the left and the right here are just in different realities. How they believe the world works, what they believe people in power are doing are just irreconcilable. This interview, I think, shows something that we haven't talked about enough, which is that the Trump administration itself manages to inhabit both those realities. And just to give you, Tull, a sense of the quality of journalism in this interview,
Okay.
I'm going to give you a quote of a question from Bartiromo. You've been working on an investigation of China for many years. I remember years ago, you were looking at China's bad behavior and how it constantly undermines the United States.
Right. It sounds like something we did in our first podcast, doesn't it?
It does. It really, yeah, she's been a journalist for 30 years. It does. It really does sound like something we would have said in our pilot or something. And not even the pilot we released, the pilot that we recorded, and we burned down the data center to make sure no one could ever hear it. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
It's just this inane kind of conspiratorial but factless thing about Chinese hackers and how they're in all our universities and stuff. So, and Patel, he sounds like a 19-year-old. He really like just getting interviewed, like to get into college or something. At one point, he's just rattling off his resume, and it's rough.
And Trump's probably watching this, is he? I mean, Patel is probably staring there wide-eyed, his eyes bulging over his head like they usually are, and Trump's probably watching this and thinking to himself, what's this guy at?
In all seriousness, I think Trump absolutely is watching this. He's close to Bartiromo. He's a big fan of her. We know he watches Fox News, and we know it's on Sunday morning. Like, I'm not joking when I say, like, the odds are high, like legitimately well past 50% that Trump is actually watching this live. And it's probably not a coincidence that Patel is going on this specific show after the article hits. Steve Bannon, who I'm not real thrilled about quoting for anything, but I think this is a fair point. He said on his podcast that he thought that this was, quote, a sanctioned hit, that basically Patel is on there because that's going to get it in front of Trump, a way for Trump to understand that this story is getting coverage. I think it's the other way around, to be honest. But I think you're right. I think Trump is watching, and as you watch it, you get the sense that Patel is kind of trying to talk to Trump. He's trying to audition for Trump. He's trying to save his job, trying to give his side of the story.
No, I read the Bannon piece and the article where he said it's a hit job, and maybe it's not the hit job that Bannon is saying quite explicitly, but I think there's probably some sort of internal machinations going on there. You know, it's all very Lord of the Flies at the moment.
Yeah.
And they're all fighting to keep their jobs, essentially. And
no doubt.
The great, when I say great, I use that word quite, reservedly, genius of Bannon's political strategies was that there was always a grain of truth in everything he said.
Yeah, you absolutely cannot divorce this interview from the Atlantic story and just from the broader positioning of the Trump administration right now. This is not just him going on the Sunday morning show because they booked him 3 months ago. Everybody involved, I think, is doing this for specific political reasons. And it is kind of interesting when they get to the discussion of the article in The Atlantic. Patel says, quote, "Look, Maria, you and I have been at this together for a long time," which is really such a fascinating admission of what Fox News actually is. And Bartiromo actually refers back to that quote later without criticizing it. At this point, any pretense of them being balanced, of not being just the media arm of the MAGA movement, is gone. But Patel goes through his resume again. He talks about how the FBI stopped 4 terrorist attacks in December. He has to say that that's more than Joe Biden did in 4 years, which is really odd. Yeah, it's all just kind of nuts. But let's get to the key part of the interview, and we're going to quote Bartiromo here.
Okay.
"Every time I see President Trump, he says this repeatedly, that the election was rigged in 2020. I mean, he says it all the time. We all know that. And it's almost getting lost because he says it so much. You've been at the FBI now for 14 months. Have you done anything about that? And do you have anything to tell us about that?"
And has Kash Patel actually done anything about this election rigging that they keep bringing up? I can get an honest answer out of you. You're not Fox News.
He hasn't really. They went to Georgia and seized ballots. They have not really given any evidence to support Trump's claim. What jumps out to me is the fact that Bartiromo is so brazenly just saying that, oh, Trump said the election was rigged without qualifying it and without saying, oh, he says it's rigged even though we don't have evidence. Fox News famously paid $787 million in a defamation lawsuit against Dominion Voting Systems, which manufactures voting machines here. And Bartiromo's comments were part of that lawsuit. The things that Bartiromo said herself and the things that she allowed her guests to say unquestioned were a part of what got Fox News into trouble. And again, I've said this a couple times. I'm really worried about these midterms. I'm really worried about how Trump and his people are going to react if and when the polls show what we think they're going to show, which is a Democratic route. And it is really interesting that Bartiromo, in front of 3 million Republicans, is planting this seed unquestioned. And it is a little bit of a change from what even Fox has done the last couple of years.
So essentially, the presenter and Fox News have not learned from their mistakes.
Yeah, it's possible they haven't learned from their mistakes. It's also possible that what they've learned is that you just say it was rigged without saying who rigged it. Because if you say it's rigged, no one can sue you. I mean, the stuff that they said about Dominion and another manufacturer called Smartmatic was just insane. I mean, they were making specific claims. They were saying Dominion people went into the software and did this. They were saying Hugo Chavez founded Smartmatic. It's just like, oh yeah, Fidel Castro founded McDonald's. Who knew? Like, it's just like, you just can't say this. You're going to get sued and you are going to lose. You're going to get laughed out of court, basically. And so it could be that they haven't learned their lesson. And Bartiromo is a true believer. The more cynical view is that they are the media arm of MAGA and they are working to reanimate election conspiracy stuff, only being smarter about doing it in a way that doesn't get them sued.
Now, Vincent, we had our own issue in Ireland with e-voting machines. Back in 2002, we were going to bring in electronic voting, and they tried it in some places. Normally, the rigmarole in Ireland is that, you have your tally men looking over, counting ballots. They're sorted by the local authority that's doing the count. And, you could be waiting 2 days for an answer. And because we're a proportional representation system, one person is eliminated, their votes are distributed, one person is... So this can go on for 2 or 3 days. It's a ritual almost in Ireland. It's a sacred thing, a holy thing. Even if you're not interested in politics, you're looking at that count over 3 or 4 days, and you're switching on the TV to see the dejected expressions, the broken hearts, the politicians that have lost their seats.
Now, sounds very dramatic. It sounds very, very cinematic even. Yeah.
It is very cinematic, and it's an incredible blood sport. It's my favourite of all the blood sports. So it was trial at the general election in May 2002, and the election machines were used in 3 constituencies, I think. Dublin North, Dublin West and Meath. I think it was Nora Owen, grandniece of Michael Collins. They put all their little bits of paper into the machine and had an answer within about 30 seconds or something mad like that. and up it flashed. You've lost your seat. That's it. Game over. The poor woman nearly dropped dead on the spot. And that was it. And it filled the whole nation with horror that, it's over. It's done. This is it. And we decided there and then, we're not having these e-voting machines. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way with the Peon Louis, the pencil, as we call it, as Gaeilge in Irish, the Peon Louis. And we never went back there again. So we paid stupid money for these e-voting machines, millions. And then we spent hundreds of thousands of storing them in some shed, up in Meath or Westmeath. I can't remember where it was. And eventually they were sold for scrap metal, would you believe?
How about that?
And that's our e-voting story. That's Ireland's flirtation with the e-voting machines. We thought this is terrible. We don't want this. We don't want instant results. We want to see the blood sport. We want to see the colour drain from their face and their soul sucked out through their lifeless body. And sorry, I went off on a tangent there on e-voting machines, but that's where we are.
No, I had not heard that story. I'm surprised some right winger hasn't twisted it into Ireland tried it and failed because it elected 3 TDs who actually were from Bulgaria and not even on the ballot.
Yeah, so there you go. That's our e-voting story. And nobody got sued either. It was just, you lost your seat. That's it. That's the end of it.
That's great. So back to our old friend, children's author Kash Patel. He's asked about the 2020 election, and he gives a very long answer. Unfortunately, the answer is basically pretty much solely about the 2016 election. He is talking about the corruption that tried to thwart Trump's first run. He's talking about these alleged abuses of FISA, which is a secret court that allows for wiretapping and things like that. And he's going on and on and on. And what's notable, I think, in there is he says that he had to come into the FBI and that he finds on FBI computers files in, quote, restricted and prohibited systems, files that are purposely put so that no one can find them.
Okay.
And he says, we have found all this information and we are working with prosecutors at the Department of Justice and we are going to be making arrests. That was the quote we opened with, right? We are going to be making arrests. It's coming, and I promise you, it's coming soon. This is part of a buildup that has happened on the right, which is getting basically zero coverage in the media. The director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has been saying the same thing, that she's uncovered all these documents that prove that all the stuff about Trump supposedly colluding with Russia in 2015 and 2016 was a hoax. The Democratic officials and people in the administration knew it was a hoax, that they created the hoax, and on and on.
I'm reading there that he said they found terabytes of data on computers from the last 10 years. Does he even know what a terabyte is and how long that would take to read, I wonder?
Probably not.
I mean, when you're talking, if he said, I found a terabyte, okay, that might be plausible, but terabytes... Yeah, you're going to be there for the next 20 years reading that, If you're a team of 100 people working 100 hours a week, you're going to be there for years trying to read that data.
Maybe to use a term he doesn't really care for, that too is rhetorical hyperbole. Yeah. Right? So he gets a pass. But but I just want to kind of zero in on this. There are multiple members of this administration and Donald Trump himself, if you go to his True Social account. Another thing I do not recommend our viewers do. Please don't. Life is short. Pushing the same narrative. They have evidence that this 2015-2016 was a hoax. They have evidence that Obama himself knew, that Obama himself, this is not exaggeration, that he committed treason. And I would point out for overseas listeners that there's one crime defined in the United States Constitution, that's treason. And the prescribed penalty is the death penalty. I do think it is worth taking a step back to understand that that's a story that millions and millions of Americans are being told. We kind of get used to this idea of like, oh, there's weird on the internet and there's weird people who believe Biden is an alien and Pizzagate and whatever, Now we have the fun one on the left, it's just really wonderful. The American politics are just collapsing. Now everyone on the left is convinced that the assassination attempt of Trump and Butler in 2024, that was staged. That's a new fun thing. No one wants to believe reality anymore, I guess, is the story. But
well, the problem there is reality has become too painful to exist in. So they're grasping at truths that they want to be true because the sad reality of their existence at the moment in the United States is that, the land of the free is not so free anymore.
I think there's part of that. Absolutely. And it's true on both sides. To hope that if it's true, then your side will finally get the complete and total victory. But that's childish. It's politics. You don't get a complete and total victory, right? I mean,
No.
that's not how this works. And you shouldn't get a complete and total victory. But to kind of overemphasize the point, perhaps, that Patel is doing this on Fox News. We're not spending this time talking about weird online forums or on X or whatever. This is a pretty coordinated effort. Again, like we have the quote, Patel saying to Bartiromo, we've been working together for a long time. This is a coordinated effort by people in the Trump administration, by the media to push this narrative. And that narrative, if taken to its logical conclusion, ends with the arrest of Barack Obama. And I'm not going to be like, sensational and say, oh, his execution. That's the story that his people are being told. And you can't divorce that from the fact that midterm elections are arriving in 6.5 months.
The ultimate conspiracy theory, Vincent. It's the only conspiracy theory I've seen you buy into that. And it's not even a conspiracy theory. I believe it. And most reasonable people would believe that Trump is going to try and undermine the midterms. I think any reasonable person would actually, with their brain switched on, can see that that's happening. But, on the right to tell you that's a conspiracy theory, but it's happening in front of our eyes. I completely agree with you. It is happening in front of our eyes. And it's an incredibly sad state of affairs that we're, I suppose, spending a lot of the podcast debunking or confirming conspiracy theories in some sense, aren't we? In political ones anyway, not the Lindenberg baby one or anything like that, but like modern political conspiracy theories, they need to be debunked on a regular basis.
Yeah, they do. 2020 election fraud one is really wild in the sense that there are some things that just prove so obviously that it's not true. And one is the fact that when Fox News was sued by Dominion, the discovery of that case included text after text after text from Fox News personalities, basically texting each other going, oh yeah, none of this is true.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson, who's kind of spun out on his own after getting fired and done a little bit of a split with Trump, he has a text in there that says, our viewers are good people. You use the word good people, and we shouldn't be saying this to them.
Yes, well, he's one of the primary movers behind the Trump shooting was fake in recent weeks, hasn't he?
He's doing that?
He is, yes. Yeah.
He has just lost his mind. I don't know what the hell's going on with him.
He's one of the main guys pushing that.
That's bizarre. Yeah.
And he's hosting people that are saying that as well also. And I will tell you, I bought into it slightly, the Trump assassination. And I'll tell you why, from playing rugby.
Okay.
Because everybody knows your cartilage. Any rugby player will tell you, that's in a scrum, tell you your cartilage doesn't grow back.
Right.
And I saw one of the conspiracy theorists said, everybody knows this. If your ear won't heal there, if it gets a cut or a laceration or whatever the case may be, it has to be put back together with plastic surgery and all that. And most rugby players don't bother because it's a badge of honor and stuff that you've got busted up cartilage in your ear and things like that.
Right.
So I bought into it for 10 seconds and I switched it off.
Yeah, we're dominated by conspiracy theories. And I don't see how you can possibly believe that if the Democrats have big wins in November, that Trump is just like, yeah, that's fine. Oh man, yeah, we got to change. We got to do some political stuff. There was a big vote in Virginia this week over changing districts for the House of Representatives.
Gerrymandering, I call it.
Gerrymandering, yes. Yeah, the big debate in U.S. politics right now. Democrats won that vote narrowly. Of course, the next morning, what does Trump do? You know exactly what he does. Yeah, I don't have to tell you. He goes on Truth Social and he posts that the election was rigged. And what do you think he's going to do when they lose 40 seats in the House? What do you think his supporters are going to do? And I've made this point before. I said last week, I was like, we don't need to belabor this. This Patel interview, I think, gives you a sense that maybe you actually do need to belabor this. The fact that this is moving to Fox News, the fact that Patel is interviewing for Trump, I think, on Fox News by saying this stuff about 2016 and then 2020. And it is funny if you get to the end of the interview, he gives this whole spiel about 2016 and all this stuff that I'm talking about. And Bartiromo goes, okay, that's great, but I was asking about 2020. Patel's answer is, he goes, I'm sorry, I misheard. Now, maybe, maybe he misunderstood, or maybe it's the fact that he doesn't have anything on 2020. And so he can't go on a speech that's going to make Trump happy. He has to pretend he misheard. But one more quote from there. That this is where you get the terabytes of data things that you're talking about. He says that they are folding the 2020 election into the entire conspiracy case. So now basically what he is saying publicly is this conspiracy was not in the Obama administration. It actually runs across
multiple administrations,
the entire Democratic apparatus. And, quote, we have the information that backs President Trump's claim. So we have people on the right being told by the head of the FBI, okay, no, this is not just Trump being Trump. Even Trump supporters know, sometimes Trump says, right? This is the head of the FBI saying, nope, no, he's not lying about the 2020 election. This is Fox News reversing from saying that, he's lying about the 2020 election. And if you think the Democrats go in November and nothing's going to happen, you're out of your mind. And that's why I think this is a big story. And it's not covered because Trump has like this 2-track thing. Trump lives in these two universes. He goes on Fox News and he says all these crazy things that his viewers listen to, but most other people don't, and they don't get covered. He goes on Truth Social and says bizarre things. We talked about crazy social media post. He's talking about the election fraud being run out of Dubai embassy and Italian satellites. Yeah. His supporters see that. It doesn't make the news. There is this universe where his people are getting just fed stuff from the administration, from him, on Fox News and social media. But he's also then goes into like the real world, right? He's giving random interviews constantly to mainstream media outlets. People he says are fake news, he's constantly calling them up and giving interviews.
I think it's the other way around, Vincent. I think the Financial Times rang him up on one stage. Somebody from The Guardian rang him up on another stage to keep getting his phone number, and they just keep ringing him up.
Yeah, well, that's true. Sometimes they call him, sometimes he calls them. Either way, he just seems oddly happy to pick up. Again, in the right-wing universe, these are all the people who have spent 10 years dedicating their lives to commit crimes, multiple crimes, conspiracy after conspiracy to bring down Donald Trump. And then in the other universe, Trump is just talking to him. Oh, hey, you're from the Atlantic? What's going on, man? Yeah, I'll talk to you about Iran for 90 minutes. That's fine. I don't understand how he keeps the logical incompatibility of these two universes kind of in his own head. He seems so happy just to switch back and forth, even though they just can't coexist.
Well, we're back again to the state of his mental faculties, his lack of, or, call it whatever you want, his madness, the Mad King theory.
Yeah. And then there's the other theory that this is all 4D chess, right? That he knows exactly what he's doing, that he's playing, essentially both sides. He's playing the media the way he wants. He's playing his base the way he wants. I lean more towards your explanation than mine. But regardless, that is what is going on here. These two universes, the Trump administration is feeding both these universes. And the problem is, again, the New York Times is giving all sorts of coverage to this Atlantic article because that's a story that the New York Times has always told. If you're the New York Times, how do you cover bizarre True Social posts about conspiracies? How do you cover a Fox News interview where the FBI director is saying that arrests are coming? Part of the problem is in covering it is that we also have 10 years that none of this stuff kind of really pans out, right? We have Trump and his supporters saying for 10 years that elections are rigged, but they don't ever actually get around to do anything about it. We have the people that he's hired in his administration who have said, people need to be arrested. In some cases, they said people need to be executed, all these sorts of things. But again, the institutions hold up. So I think that it's hard for mainstream media to cover just because it sort of feels like it's a waste. You're going to write this article about what Trump said, and then nothing's going to happen. So why are you covering it?
Yeah, but there's no template for this. There's no.
Well, that's previous. True too. Yeah.
There's no previous for how to report on this or deal with it or appear unbiased or with your eyes hanging over your head in amazement or choking on your own tongue because you're stuck for words. There's no template for this, Vincent.
Yeah, that's true.
I watch RT News here in Ireland, and sometimes I'm looking at them and they're utterly professional, but you can see they're struggling to make head or tail of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're governed by Truth Social posts. I was talking to a fellow in the financial industry recently. It's like this guy is dealing with multiples of zeros on a daily basis, and he was telling me that they have a guy, and he's their intern, and all his job is to monitor Trump's Truth Social posts.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the only one. That makes absolute sense.
He's based out of London. Hello, Sean, if you're listening. But he's based out of London. He was telling me this. This is his job. Okay.
Yeah.
If Trump says something about oil or commodities or whatever else, his thing is to bring a big bell and make sure everybody in the building bloody knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that there's got to be some kind of IT system to make sure that information from that guy gets to multiple people instantly. Right. It's not something he doesn't go and send out an email, hey, everybody. No, it's got to be an alert because, the markets really do move when he talks. Yeah, that's fascinating, but makes sense. Yeah.
It's no way to do business.
No.
It's so volatile. It's no way to do business.
Well,
there's no previous.
If you're in the financial industry, volatility is actually.
Yeah, they factor in volatility, of course, right? They factor in a certain amount of volatility. But this level of volatility has never been seen before,
Yeah, in terms of, not in the market as a whole, but in terms of being specifically politically driven this often. There's never been an 18-month stretch, in history where the American president is moving stocks, moving commodities, materially, over and over and over again.
So, what you got going on here, normally markets move politics. All right, rates go up.
That's
down.
A good way to put it, yeah.
Rates go up, down, job figures aren't great. Politicians react, stimulus packages, bailouts, tax breaks. Take your pick of political tinkering to make the markets better. Now it's the other way around.
That's the story of the fuel protest, right? The market moves and then politicians react. Yep.
Yeah. Now, the flip side of that in the United States is the geopolitics and the politics of the man in the White House is moving markets.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it may have happened before. We'll have to have some historian on to tell us, has that happened before? But not at this level. Not at this level.
Perhaps at this level, but to me, the thing that jumps out fine this day and day is the frequency. Like there's no president that moved markets every month for a year and a half.
He's moving markets every day.
Yeah. In some small way, but I'm talking like where the headlines on financial news is, S&P 500 was down 2.5% today because Trump did X, Y, Z. I mean, that's happened, 10, 12 times? You go back to the tariffs. The tariff drama feels like it was 6 years ago, but he announces the tariffs, market plunges, and then there's 6 months of the tariffs where every time he posts, China gets 150% tariff, all of a sudden stocks are plunging. Obviously U.S. presidents can move markets when they do things. No one has just done it 20 times, 15 times over the span of a year and a half. However he's doing it, in whatever way he's doing it. We have a pretty large swath of Trump's base now who believes that big things are coming because they're being told that arrests are coming, that changes are coming. And when you have those expectations, which are rising by the day, Patel said in that interview, by the way, that something was supposed to happen this week. They indicted a nonprofit for fraud, which is a different story, but certainly did not sound like that's what he was referencing. He seems like he's promising that political arrests are coming soon. And if you have that steady rise in expectations leading into the midterms that then collides with the reality of the fact that Republicans are going to get smoked, there is just no way around that at this point. That's a dangerous collision,
Yes, Vincent, I said earlier, the Republican Party reminded me of Fianna Fáil in 2011. The crash came, the political party was wiped out. And there's a lot of similar parallels here. Apart from, the Fianna Fáil guys were mostly sober for the most part. I'm sure they were drowning their sorrows when they saw the upcoming apocalypse, financial apocalypse was coming in. And I think there's people in Trump's regime, administration, whatever you're calling yourself today, that see what's coming down the tracks and they're freaking out because there will be a reckoning eventually. There's always a reckoning. We had a reckoning in Ireland. We had a great kind of inquiry into the financial crash and who was responsible. But, typical Irish, nobody was responsible, but we all really were responsible. So
yeah, we'll see if that reckoning comes. That's the one thing about Trump. People have been waiting for, projecting, believing in, hoping for a reckoning for 12 years now. It hasn't arrived. We'll see if it does. But my worry here and the point I'm trying to make is I'm really worried about how he and his people react to that reckoning. And I think we're badly underestimating that risk. And as a result, it's something I wanted to talk about here. And it's going to be something we're going to talk about more in the next 6 months. This is a concern, and I think people need to take notice.
Okay. We're ending the podcast on quite a pessimistic note.
Yep.
So I'm going to end it on a good note. I'm going for some beers with Kash Patel later, Vince. Okay.
Oh, are you? Are you going to the Neds or the Poodle Room?
We're going to Ned's, I think. We'll go to Ned's, I think. I want to see what this Ned's place is about.
A little classier, yeah.
Right. If you don't hear
you can have some drinks with all the deep state people who hang out there too.
Sure, I'm deep state Irish anyway, according to people.
There you go.
So if you don't hear from me, I'm in FBI clutches in West Cork somewhere. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
And I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street, Maine. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.